You'll have that moment when you're like, I'm not giving up yet. We're in this. We're staying in this. And you'll be amazed at how, even though that sounds like a really simple thing, that will completely transform your practice.
Yeah.
Welcome to SoulPod, where science meets mysticism and your inner wisdom leads the way. I'm your guide, Crystal Cassidy, and together we will bridge the seen and the unseen, science and spirituality, the practical and the profound. From quantum physics to energy centers, near-death experiences to extraterrestrial contact, join us as we delve into the mysteries of consciousness and journey together towards a more awakened, compassionate, and soul-connected world. Find your seat, drop in, and let's go on a journey together. Welcome back to Soul Podcast. So excited to be with you light beings this week. We are going to get into portals, both the mystical components of portals, what do we think a portal is, and what you can find in SoulPod as far as our new feature and the different practices and rituals and experiences that you can go through now in SoulPod. And I'm so excited to be joined by Kat and Linda again today. Welcome.
Hey. Hey.
So to jump in here, why did we name this feature in SoulPod portals? You hear about portals a lot, but like, what are they from a spiritual perspective? And maybe I'll start with punting that to Kat today. How do you think about portals?
Yeah, I love that we name them this because it feels like such a just deep and multi-dimensional word. You know, it can take so many different iterations in our lives, but the way I see portals are when you're standing at this threshold. And the way I see it, like you step up to a portal and you don't necessarily know what's on the other side. And as you move through the portal, you're catalyzing this potential for the unknown to create for you. And so you don't know necessarily what's on the other side, but you step through this portal, trusting that what you're stepping into is for you, is more aligned, is greater than anything you could conceive of. And so with that, there's this level of inherent uncertainty. There's this level of inherent trust that you need to have and a deep, deep surrender into trusting that stepping through this portal, although it might feel scary, although it might feel disorienting, is for you, is everything that is meant for you on the other side. So it's such a beautiful visual, especially as we orient around it in our practice and our meditation practice and in SoulPod. There's so much like beautiful potential to sit with in that word and bringing that into the app. So I love it. What about you?
Me too. Yeah, I think when we talk about portals, there's so much to talk about here as far as portals. I think of them very similar to you. It's a accelerated step from one state of being into another. And it requires you to leave something behind. And that's part of the scary part about transformation, is the leaving behind of the old self, of an old way of being, of an old belief, of an old way, even of just moving through your day to day. A portal is a method of transformation. And I think there's even a more mystical component to this, which for some reason I'm feeling called to talk about too. And this is, I'll share a story. So when I think I came across like an actual portal in the world. And so there's both the metaphorical concept of a portal, and I think there's actually more of a literal spiritual experience of portals as well. And I really came to understand this when I was on a trip with my mom, and we were walking, it's just south of San Francisco, and I came across this tree, and this tree was big. I could instantly feel the energy, and very old, of course. And so I stepped up to this tree, felt the barrier, which energetically felt like both an invitation and a little bit of a like permission that was needed. And so before I stepped further, I took a moment to align with the energetics of this space to kind of honor the portal that I think I came across. And once I had moved through some of that energy, and in my mind's eye, I was seeing it was very like earthly, like nymph type of vibes, like forest, which is not typically been my thing. I'm more like extraterrestrial, like spacey vibes. And so this was very earthbound. And then I stepped past that point and sat down beside the tree. And it was one of the most powerful experiences. And it did feel like to me at the time that I had literally stepped into a different energetic. Like it felt like I had, from one step to the next, was a different consciousness. It was a different energy. And so I think when you go through like actual portals like that exist in our dimensions of space and time, that it's the same thing as when we're going through any transformation and I had to leave something behind in order to step through. I had to honor my intention and I had to allow myself to connect with this different energy and then worked to integrate it. When I was on, which we'll talk more about integration here, when I was on the other side of that energy and to explore and get curious about it. What does this energy have to share with me? What does this tree, whatever it's been developed, it felt like maybe there was other people there before that had been involved in developing this very sacred space.
Yeah.
I think that's another word for it, is sacred energy, sacred space. And sometimes there's a little bit of a barrier around that. Like not just anybody's going to be invited into that energy. You will be when you're ready. And when that energy, that consciousness is open to you, there's some sort of connection that happens. And so that's kind of an example of a actual, I think, physical earth portal. And many people have stories, Stonehenge and Newgrange, which I went to last year, have similar vibes. Like you enter into this space and you can feel that there's a certain level of consciousness, this certain energy that has been almost like seeded into that space and time that allows you to enter quite literally a portal of transformation for yourself, to practice or access this new energy that is, at least in my case, always been elevating. Like I remember at Newgrange, there was these really weird not little, but like perfectly round meditation cushion looking rocks that looked like little mini flying saucers. I had never seen anything quite like it. If you've been there, you probably know what I'm talking about. And they just lined the path up to Newgrange. And I asked about them. They said, yeah, these are like, there's a lot of iron in them or something because they look kind of orange. They looked really different. And I put my hand on one and I instantly could feel the inner vibrations of that energy.
Oof.
And when I came back, I don't know if we're allowed to do this, so my apologies if this was the wrong thing to do, but I sat on one and I meditated on it. And it was like, what an energy. I mean, I had a hard time coming back down into my body. So I think about all of these as being these portals of transformation. And I think we're going through these in our lives every day in some way. We're leaving something behind to step into something new. And then another way that I think about portals is also a little bit more literal, but when you're in meditation and you've accessed the field and you're starting to access new possibilities, and I've seen this in a meditation quite literally, there's almost these I saw like a lattice network of all of these little tunnels, but like infinite of them, like lattice built all over space. And entering a new timeline, I almost got sucked into one of them. And that was a kind of visual I like to share too. I do think it's a timeline kind of movement, but it's also a portal from one thing to the next thing. And for us at SoulPod, that's what we're about. We're about transformation. We're about leaving what's blocking you from who it is you are foundationally. We're just helping you find and reconnect to that and amplify it. And to do that, we got to leave some stuff behind that's in the way of who it is that you already are.
Yeah.
So portals is another way to do that.
Yeah. I think an inherent aspect of portals that we keep touching on is exactly that, that something, the version of you before you enter the portal is going to be different than the version of you after when you step out of the portal. And inside the portal is, if you want it, the way I kind of visualize it, it's just like, it may even feel chaotic, like you're swirling around, transform. It's like the cocoon of the butterfly. Like you are in this metamorphosis of sorts, and you don't necessarily know you don't know you're about to turn into a butterfly, but you're in this portal of transformation. And so on the other side of that, inevitably you're going to be a different version of self, a more expanded version of self. And like knowing that and embracing that as a truth of the spiritual path just invites so much more peace when you find yourself in this place of chaos or disorientation, in that chrysalis. And then you can notice and bring awareness to it and be like, oh, I'm in a portal. Not only is this beautiful, but there's so much here that I'm able to harness. This is a powerful space because transformation is taking place in this moment. So how do I want to orient around this specific part of the journey?
Yeah. I feel like also there can, with portals, like you can kind of manufacture your own version of it too. Like on a psychological level, the brain knows when certain things are barriers of definition between one space and another. A great example is the ADHD mind. If you, anyone who's ever walked through a doorway and completely forgotten why they're there, this is like, it's like a psychological phenomenon where the changing of your environment can elicit an entire new reality, you know?
Mm.
That's why I keep selenite over my doorways for this reason, because each doorway is going to be a portal, you know? But then another great way to do this, like to kind of have like a psychological hack around it, is in the shower, especially if I'm going through transformation, energetically cleanse using the water, but I'll know that the doorway between my shower ledge and the bathroom itself is the portal I'm stepping through. So I like to, especially in times of transformation, just take a moment to leave whatever I'm leaving behind in that water down the drain. And
Mm.
then when you step out of the shower, you're stepping through a portal into a new reality. And it's kind of a way to, do exactly what you're saying, which is leave behind the old.
Yeah, and fusing like, this metaphor and the symbolism of this into moments that feel mundane, stepping into the
Hmm.
shower and really creating ritual around every aspect of your life. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. And knowing like that exiting the shower is a portal, just like all other moments of time can be a portal too, that are either a gift or given to us by ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious what some of, in hindsight, or maybe where you're in one now, but like what some of the most influential portals have been in your lives.
Books, for sure.
Ooh, books. Yeah.
Books and apps. Shout out SoulPod.
Mm.
Yeah.
Shut up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think definitely for me, books, like Many Lives, Many Masters. I've been talking about this book a bit this week. It was a huge portal for me. Like as I was reading it, I was like, wait a second. This is true. Something was activating, something was being remembered.
Yeah.
I also think even when you go through difficult times, I think those
Mhm.
are portals.
Hmm.
When you go through challenges that you didn't think you had the capacity to go through, that's inevitably going to be a portal.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
even when it's not like life threatening or whatever, but it's just a hard week. Like you're being faced with something.
Mhm.
Like I can't remember who said that, but it was something along the lines of there's a lesson here for you, and the reason that you know that that's the case is because you're having that experience.
Mm.
And so I think about that a lot, and whenever I'm in a challenging time, I'm like, "Ooh, I'm in a portal, I'm in
Mm.
transformation,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm in an opportunity." And to also remind yourself, I think for a lot of us that are Virgo,
Yeah.
on the spiritual path, we can start to think there's something wrong with us when we're in the middle of it.
Mhm.
Just maybe like the caterpillar that's getting literally emulsified in the cocoon. It's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
It doesn't,
Like I was
but
just a caterpillar.
I know. Why am I disintegrating? And it doesn't know that on the other side of this
Right.
transformation is this big up level. And so to give yourself lots of grace when you're going through these portals of transformation, know that there's nothing wrong with you. You haven't done something wrong in your spiritual journey because you're having a hard time. I've battled with that one in the past, as far as like, well, if I'm having a bad time or if this is hard, it must mean that I'm doing something wrong in my spiritual practice. And it's like, no, you're just in the chrysalis. You're just
Right.
in the portal and you're coming out the other side. Yeah. So for me, serious illness has been a portal. Books have been a portal. Meditation is for me the ultimate portal. I'm entering it every day and experiencing what's on the other side of material reality, or what we perceive to be material reality, moving into a different possibility, a more expanded awareness and perception. So that to me is like we're entering the portal every day when you're doing meditation. So those are the big ones for me.
Yeah. And that's like the whole reason why we brought portals into SoulPod, right? Is to give people these opportunities to notice a portal and move through it based on what they're experiencing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way we are thinking about portals, and we have journeys, which are like 21 rituals, they go deep into your spiritual energetics. Portals are these kind of like mini journey experiences, still very intentional, still going to take you through an experience, but they're like little acceleration points. Like when you're ready to push the gas a little bit more and you want to go deep, but maybe not like a 30-day immersion deep. That's how we view these portals of transformation. Portals in SoulPod, which we're so excited about, and there's more coming. One of the portals that I was really keen on developing for you all is the beginner's portal. So I put everything that I wish I had known decades ago as I was getting into my spiritual journey. And that's everything from the newest science that we know about what's happening biologically, how are you being physically, mentally, emotionally upgraded. The reason I like to include this in the beginner's portal is because the more that you understand what's going on in your physical experience, what's going on in your brain, what's going on in your gut-brain axis, for example, that gives you increasing permission to go deeper into these practices, because there's one level of mind, the analytical level of mind, that can relax a little bit. It's like, oh, this is good for me. This is going to help me increase my capacity for resilience. This is actually going to help my gut if you have a messed up gut. That's one thing that I noticed in my practice, that the more I meditated, the more everything in the gut tended to work better. And your HRV is increasing, your heart rate variability. Your brain is literally shifting. We've talked about this on other episodes as well. And your cellular aging is even being impacted. Like telomerase is increased so that your cells are literally, you're getting younger, like as you meditate. We now know this. And we know that you increase certain brainwave states that are really beneficial for creativity, for feeling more calm, being able to deal with stress, resilience, and even access the mystical state. So I like to include a really kind of a deep dive into that so that you understand why you're doing what you're doing. And then we get into a little bit of a dance with the unknown, so that as you get into this meditative experience, you can view the unknown as a friend and as a co-creator. I think that's really important when you're first getting started. And then we get into quite a bit of work around resistance. So the first thing you're going to encounter inevitably when you're developing your spiritual capacities, and meditation being one of them, that you're going to come up against resistance. And I don't think it's talked about enough. We talk a lot about like, you're going to sit down and feel peace and calm. And that's not exactly, I think, helpful framing for the beginning. You're going to sit down and not want to sit down. You know, I hear from people all the time. I just heard actually from my husband on a phone call with somebody else this morning that he can't sit still. And you hear this a lot. I can't sit still. And what I'm going to break to him later, love you, Jordan, is that you can sit still.
Yeah.
It's whether you are prioritizing that in your life or not. And it's okay. You don't have to prioritize it, right? But don't get it twisted. It is a choice. This is the tough love from
Why do our
SoulPod.
brains do that? Is it like a safety thing, or what is the reason for it's like scared of the unknown is the core reason why
Scared
resistance?
of the unknown. You don't want to face your ego in stillness.
Doing
It's not fun.
everything it can to maintain the status quo and maintain the known and the what we've perceived as safe, even if we consciously are like, we don't want these circumstances, we don't like this. Our
Yeah,
subconscious is like, but we know it, so it's safe.
right. I want the calm that's on the other side of the meditation, but it's the meditation part that's hard, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a portal, and you have to want it on
Yeah.
some level.
Yeah.
You got to want it,
You have to have a deeper
and
why.
you
Hmm.
have to have a deeper why. And
Hmm.
so, beginner's portal, I try and help you establish that why. And if you can find that for yourself, why is it important for you to have a spiritual connection? Why
Yeah.
is it important for you to move out of the physical experience into your higher self? Why is it important that you develop more presence in your life? And I think the number one thing when you're getting started with this is to answer that question honestly with yourself. And once you find it, it will propel you forward, even in those challenging moments, which you will have in meditation. You'll tell yourself when you're facing that resistance, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual, you'll have that moment when you're like, I'm not giving up yet. We're in this, we're staying in this. And you'll be amazed at how, even though that sounds like a really simple thing, that will completely transform your practice.
Yeah.
I do it almost every day. I come into my resistance and I'm like, nope, we're still going here. And you'll get to the point to where you can do an hour and a half meditation and there is very little resistance that comes up. That is possible, but you got to get clear on your why.
Super cool.
And it feels like a portal. Yes, it's named the beginner's portal, but it's also an invitation for seasoned meditators, like
Yeah.
when you've been meditating for a while, I think when you've been doing anything for a while, you can start to step into that, like, I know it already. I already know what's going on. Even if you face resistance, you start to believe that you don't need help getting through it. And you're just like, oh, well, I meditated enough. I'm okay. I'll do it tomorrow, whatever. And so this portal is an invitation for, yes, beginners and more seasoned meditators to come back to the fundamentals, to kind of like, dust out the crevices of your practice and come back and reaffirm and really redevote yourself. It's like renewing your vows, Yeah.
Renewing your
Renewing
spiritual vows.
to yourself and being like, okay, I thought I knew this and I might still know it, but there's no harm in redevoting myself to this knowledge, to these teachings and just kind of refortifying the foundations.
Yeah.
I love that because that's such a good point. And for those of you that have been doing this for a long time, you know that resistance isn't just at the beginning. It's a little harder to navigate at the beginning because you're learning how to navigate it, but it's always a part of your practice. And so the only thing that changes is that you have the tools and the framing and the foundations to move through it. You know how to move through your resistance, no matter what kind of angle it's coming at you.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I totally agree with that it's an ongoing commitment and resistance is always a part of the story. And so when you know that, it also can give you a little bit of a reprieve just to know that there's not necessarily going to be a day where resistance isn't a part of your story.
Totally.
When you can just kind of accept that so that it doesn't psych you out as much. You're just like, oh, okay, there it is. I know what to do here. And you'll learn. This is like this is the journey part of spiritual awakening is you discover what works for you. I'm offering what works for me, but you might discover your own kind of cocktail of tools to move through your resistance that works for you. So yeah,
Resistance is such a shapeshifter too. It's like, I
yeah.
think the more you're in your practice and you can, like we're saying, bring that awareness to like, oh, there it is. And you can even bring a little bit of like levity and humor to it of like, okay, wow, I see how my mind is like telling me that it's more important to do this obscure thing that does not need to get done, on like number 90 on the to-do list before I sit down to meditate, and like making it seem so important. Like, oh, I'll just do that first. And then, and then the next thing. And every day it's almost the resistance has a different costume on. I'm like, oh, I don't have time today. I have to run out the door. and you get to just see it and be like, okay, you're there. And I am in the driver's seat of, this practice of my journey. And so I'm choosing to sit, but it's a shapeshifter.
Ooh, you know what came? It totally is. It's always thrown you off. Just like the ego is such a shapeshifter. Makes
Yeah.
sense that resistance is. And so another portal that we have, because we heard from people that they want the SoulPod soundscapes in a non-guided format. So we have our soulscapes now as a portal, which I also just love that word, soulscapes.
hmm
And we have a meditation timer. So for those days where you don't necessarily want the guidance, you want to practice developing the muscle of self-guidance, but you want a little bit of like energy and vibes behind it. That's what Soulscapes is for. And so I think this is really important to develop both the muscle of meditation and spiritual awakening through the structure, which we love structure. I love structure to this day. And it is a different experience when you guide yourself into the field, into the unknown, into another level of consciousness. And I really view soulscapes as you activating your power in learning how to guide yourself. And once you've realized, hey, I can walk myself into the infinite, I can expand into this higher level of consciousness that you can take with you anywhere, anytime. And so I'm very much a proponent of use the structure when you need it. It's like a spiritual accelerator.
hmm
And when you feel like you have the capacity, and this is basically how I personally think about it, on days where I'm like, you know what, I have the capacity to self-guide, then I'll walk myself into the infinite. And that's really what Soulscapes is for. I don't know, Kat, has that been your experience, like structure versus self-guided?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually just wrote a blog last night for our website about the kind of like benefits of guided meditation for awakening. And so it
Mm-hmm.
kind of had me in that space of juxtaposing like what do both practices offer, like self-guided versus guided. And I think you described it beautifully, and a visual that's coming to mind is like playing is bowling, like with bumpers on, where it's like this container where it's the mind might hit the bumper and then bring it back to center, and it's this container that guided meditations create. And then bowling without bumpers, where you're throwing the ball down the lane and you're seeing what happens and you're watching it. And they're both they're both powerful practices that offer different things. And I think that's what's so exciting about, I mean, SoulPod in general, but this introduction of now Soulscapes is that you now have that option to, again, tune into where you are that specific day, what you specifically need in your practice, and giving it to yourself. And
Yeah, set a timer for
yeah.
44 minutes, and
Yeah.
see where you go.
Or 4 minutes, if that's all
Or
you have,
four.
and
Yeah.
and just like seeing what happens, even if, especially if you've never tried self-guided, because I think a lot of people
Yeah.
feel super overwhelmed and intimidated by that concept of like, what do you mean just sit down and then what?
Mm,
Even if
right.
they've meditated like with guided fashion for a while, guided or self-guided can be intimidating. So this just gives you that opportunity to be like, okay, 3 minutes, and I'm gonna have sound, I'm gonna have music on. It's going to be, like you said, a vibe that's infused into this practice, and you can choose. There are some really cool options. I usually choose the You Are Worthy Soulscape, and it's this like
Mm,
super vibey. Every single time I sit down and set the timer, and it's just on, what's that called? Infinite loop. So
Yeah.
it's just,
mhm.
it's nothing, you're not like caught off guard all of a sudden by a new instrument or whatever. It's just like, what's coming. It's
So
super
good.
vibey. But yeah, it just makes the approaching of self-guided, or the stepping up to a self-guided practice, like much more digestible and fun.
I love that. And fun. Yeah, start small with self-guided. I think that's a really good call out
Yeah.
to start small. Start
hmm
with a couple minutes, start to work your way up to 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes,
Yeah,
and you'll find your way. But it's experimental, learning how to
yeah,
self-guide.
totally.
And the structure, you'll notice, will feed into what pieces of that structure you want to pull into your own equation for walking yourself onto the highway to the infinite. So,
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
approaching self-guided as well with just like unbound curiosity. I think that's like the biggest thing when you're going to sit down by yourself is instead of like going in with any expectation of like I need to get here or this, guided meditation took me to this place, I want to get there again. Instead of that, just sitting down with this curiosity, and I mean exactly what meditation is, like coming back over and over again to the breath, to that present moment, and just noticing like where did I wander? Where, how can I come back compassionately? And just being super curious instead of like, judgmental of the process because that's just not going to benefit you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Each session will be different.
Totally.
That's both the beauty and for some of us also difficult
Yeah.
because your analytical mind wants it to be something you can predict,
Yeah. And the ego wants it to be this like earth-shattering experience every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it still
Oh, it's
counts.
so true. It still counts. And actually, those sessions that seem more difficult, I can tell you from experience that it's so funny to me how I'll have like kind of a more difficult meditation. The next one will be the breakthrough, and then it'll go more difficult and breakthrough. And then you'll notice that there are these waves that come into your experience when you're doing it more consistently, and that can help also give you some solace that just because I had a challenging one today and I cried through my meditation that like there is going to be that will connect with you, that expansion in a different way and probably a more powerful way now that you've moved some emotion or frustration or whatever it is out of the way. So keep that in mind on your journey as well. And so I want to make sure we allow some time for another portal that we were really excited to launch with, and this is our integration portal, Kat. So Kat, how do you think about this portal and integration as a concept, and why did we include it in our launch of portals?
Well, I think similarly to how you describe beginners, you were like, it's everything that I, wish I had at the beginning of my spiritual journey. The integration portal was everything that I wish I had actually after I finished one of the journeys in SoulPod. I had this really profound 21-day journey. And, I was extremely devoted to that practice. And I had these beautiful breakthroughs throughout that entire journey. And then at the end of it, I was like, okay, well, what now? Where do I put all of or what do I do with all of the energy and the wisdom that this journey and this devotion over the last 21 days has awakened within me? Like, what happens now? And so I realized like we need a place to intentionally sit down and create that container for exactly that integration, which the way I think about integration is we experience these like peak moments in our practices, whether it be in meditation, whether it be on a psychedelic journey. Like we experience these peak moments in our spiritual evolution. And we can't just, I think there's like a desire to stay at that peak moment and exist there. And that's not realistic, it's not sustainable. And so bringing the insights and the downloads and the clarity that we arrive at in those peak moments into our somatic body, into our being, into this like human vessel, and then assimilating that information and then using that information, expanding into the next version of ourselves and really stepping into that identity. And that whole process is so important in the process of spiritual evolution. Like we can't just experience these breakthroughs or these downloads and then just move on to the next thing without any reflection or assimilation of that information. Wisdom is really taking knowledge and bringing it into our life and then changing the way that we behave and bringing that awareness into the way that we show up and how we interact with the world, and really, allowing ourselves to deconstruct and reconstruct a paradigm that we exist within based on a spiritual breakthrough. So, kind of taking all of that insight and information and creating a relatively short portal. It's 6 days. It feels like after a journey, or again, after a psychedelic experience, or it could even just be like after like triggering moment. It can be after being with family over the holidays, or anything where you you feel like things have been shaken up, stirred up within, and there needs to be some sort of sacred tending to.
Mhm.
That's what this portal is for, and that's what I created it, to be a container for. So yeah, I hope it's helpful for the community. It's everything that, like I said, I wish was there and felt needed to be created, especially to complement the depth that we hope to guide you in all of these journeys and in these other portals, so that your practice and your growth is really grounded and sustainable and translates into your everyday being versus just kind of this thing you experience at a peak spiritual moment and then dissipates once you return to your old way of being.
I love it. It's so important. And to your point, like a lot of times, even if I've noticed this, especially with people who are just getting into their spiritual journey and they have this big expansion and then they don't really know what to do with it.
Totally.
We really encourage like reflection, after rituals, journaling, but I think the integration portal takes it even further as it should be kind of honored, the sacred tending to, I think you mentioned. It's like
Yeah.
vibes. I really love that. Yeah, that's really giving yourself the opportunity to glean everything you possibly can from your experience, even if it's a more difficult one. Maybe you went through a journey and some difficult emotions came up and you're kind of left in a little bit of a swirl of like, wait, what did that mean for me? Can I connect to more?
Yeah.
And can I bring and really kind of clarify for myself what I've been through, what I've experienced? And like you said, bringing it down into this space and time, into your body is wisdom. It's like that churning of experience and expansion and even challenges into wisdom. I mean, that is a whole nother portal
Totally. Yeah.
into your transformation. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to have that in SoulPod. It's needed.
And
Yeah.
it's also like you're forming new neural pathways. Like it's kind of
Mhm.
an essential, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can't, it takes a certain number of repetitions for something to become standard rather than just a practice. And you can have these breakthroughs one time where you realize like, oh, I want to face this one pattern differently. I want to live life differently. I want to believe in this, the existence of more. But if life picks right back up where it was and all of the same things are happening, and
Right.
one of the most challenging things to do is to step through into that new way of being, even if nothing is changing around you, because the moment you change internally is when everything externally is going to start to change. But if you're
Yes.
not giving yourself the time and the space to form the new neural pathways that will anchor those new beliefs, you're not going to integrate that new reality into your existing one.
Yeah.
100%.
And
Yeah.
it feels like, integration's kind of like the least sexy part of the spiritual journey. Like
It is.
nobody's,
Yeah. Nobody
nobody's
really
Gotta hit
wants
your
to.
gonna go
reps in.
integrate. Everyone's like, I'm gonna go have a psychedelic journey and blast off, and I'm gonna sit in meditation, and I had my third eye was whatever.
That's so
Like
true.
So
nobody's
real.
nobody's romanticizing the integration part of the journey, but and we also, I feel like, all know people who have who have told you about their 16 ayahuasca journeys, but there's something missing where they're not quite like grounded, like they
You
haven't
need
quite.
to integrate.
Yeah, you haven't quite like grounded into the insights, into the knowings. And so it's just such a integral part of the formula of like expansion and up leveling and everything and transformation and evolution, everything we're, trying to invite you to and guide you to in SoulPod. It's such an integral part of that formula.
Yeah, and if we take it back to the portal kind of physical metaphor, you've stepped through the portal, which is change, transformation, and up leveling. You've left something behind in order to walk through this transformation. Now you're on the other side. You're on the other side of the portal. You're in a new opportunity, new possibility, new way of being, new perception, big or small. And so now you're over there. You're in this new land. You're in this new time and space, and you're having to acclimate to that new world. And that's, I think, to Kat's point, I think is so true, is sometimes we forget that part. Like you did it. You walked through the portal. You had this big rush. I walked over that boundary with the tree goddess of some sort. And now what? What are you going to do with that energy? What are you going to do with that possibility? And that's where so much of the transformation is actually happening.
Yeah.
It's in the integration that the transfer, to Linda's point, as far as how we build new ways of being in this dimension of space and time is through rewiring new neural pathways. And if you integrate that experience, that into your spiritual journey, you're going to just accelerate, I think, so much. So it's really an invitation, and what a cool thing to highlight for people, because I don't think it's talked about enough.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of the visual that I see a lot when I think about integration is like, if a wave crashes on the shore, then sand is everywhere, right? It's chaotic, sand's everywhere. And then the integration is like watching that sand settle back down to the ocean floor and really like solidifying back into the ocean floor. And so I see that a lot in meditation. I see that in Shavasana when I'm teaching yoga. It's this like allowing and settling of the, sand, of the sediment that's been roughed up and chaotic and is everywhere. Everything you've awakened in your practices and your whatever it was, experience, journey, practice, like letting it settle down again into the body.
That's really beautiful, because I think it points to maybe sometimes the way that I talk about integration, it might sound like you're doing a lot, but you just, I think, mentioned, I want to pin it, allowing, because sometimes it's as simple as just like
Totally.
just allowing whatever it is to move through you. And especially if you're conscious of that allowing, you can give yourself a little time and space to see what wants to come forward, to just let everything, like you said, settle. And then the clarity comes, then the wisdom integrates.
Yeah.
So integration can both be doing things, like maybe you need to move your body, maybe, there's all kinds of different ways. But I think one of the most powerful is this allowing. Interesting, just little side note here. In one of my meditations this week, after like an hour, I definitely went into another level of consciousness where the analytical mind doesn't have much bearing. So it's just experiencing. But the one thing that came through this week was allow oneness. And I realized that there was still some resistance for me into like completely letting go. And so that little snippet, in my experience, that's what I'm integrating, is letting my analytical mind chew on, like, okay, allow oneness. What does that mean? What is it asking of me? How can I allow more? Even though I feel like I allow a lot, but like it's asking more of me, right? It's like, how much more can you allow?
Yeah. I think that's
And
a really
yeah.
beautiful nuance and distinction to integration. Yes, there's doing that's involved, but as we're touching on, so much of it is like releasing the analytical mind. Stop, you might receive these downloads or these mantras that come through in your journeys or in your rituals, and instead of like over analyzing what's been revealed to you, just trusting and holding space for that to settle into your body and trusting that it's doing what it needs to do, that the codes are being rewritten, and all you have to do is create the container, is hold the intention and be the loving observer of that taking place.
Love it. 100%. Double click. Well, I think that's a really beautiful place to close today. And you can check out portals in SoulPod. They're brand new. Check them out. And if there's any portals that you want, any kind of niche deep dive experiences that you want to see in SoulPod, feel free to email us, support@soulpodapp.com. We would love to hear from you. Really, the way that these initial portals came together is because of what we were hearing from you and what you wanted to have in SoulPod for additional support and expansion. And so we'll be continuing to pull those together. So would love to hear from you. And thank you, Linda and Kat, for chatting with me today.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you for journeying with us today, Light Being. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And before you go, we'd love to offer you even more spiritual guidance and daily rituals. This week, we launched the biggest update since SoulPod first hit the App Store. To celebrate, we're offering you a free month of SoulPod with the code STEP INTO THE PORTAL. Your SoulPod home has been completely reimagined with even more ease, more rhythm, and more room to grow. Now you can revisit past journeys, save your favorite rituals, and build personalized playlists that move with your energy. And at the heart of it all, portals. Portals are guided mini journeys, flexible, soulful spaces designed to meet you right where you are. Beginners welcomes you into the heart of soulfulness, no experience needed. Soulscapes offers looping soundscapes for solo self-guided practice. And Integration holds you gently after transformation, offering grounding and expansion. Download the app or tap the link in our show notes to begin. We'll see you inside.